You turn this darn thing on. Whew. Boy, these leather boxes are hard to control, aren't they? Oh my god. Yes, right. I've teleported myself to the set of In the Library of Graphic Literature with your host, Wallace Ryan here. Yay! But without my pal Luna, who's working. So this is actually one of these classic fill-in episodes. But it's a good fill-in episode because I'm going to talk about one of my favorite characters, and one which has recently started to pick up a little bit of steam. And of course we are talking about Conan the Barbarian. Yay! That's why I'm wearing my barbarian hood here today. Don't I look rather barbarian-ish? Oh, sorry about that, Doc. Don't I look rather mystical and... Well, anyway. This thing's actually really warm too. This costs like probably about $150. It's one of the most expensive pieces of clothing that I have now that I think about it. But it's the warmest hood I've ever had in my life. That being said, so today we're going to be talking about Conan the Barbarian, and of course we all know who he is, the barbarian character created by Robert E. Howard all those years ago, and really brought to prominence when it hit comics, because except for the paperback books that were out in the early 70s, and they wouldn't even be out if it wasn't for the comics, because no one had really, I couldn't remember hearing about him and all that as a kid and all that, and he just seemed to come out of nowhere. And the comic, of course, was great, and they ended up doing the movie, and it just exploded. That being said, along the way, because it is a property, it has been under the aegis of several different publishing companies. First off, of course, with Marvel, and then to Dark Horse for a few years, and then back to Marvel, and then over to Titan. So it's bounced around a bit in the past 50 years. By far staying the longest, I guess, at Marvel, really. And so what happened in between all that is that sometimes there were a couple of different variations on some of Robert E. Howard's classic stories. So there'd be like, an early version done in the Marvel comic, for instance, Conan the Barbarian, in this case by Barry Windsor Smith. And then maybe the same story readapted in Savage Sword of Conan in black and white, sometimes with a different artist. In this case, the story I'm going to talk about is the same with that. Then, of course, we come to the Dark Horse run on Conan the Barbarian, which in and of itself is a great run too. If you haven't read through any of them or collected any books, they are so worth getting. What's his name? Nord is an amazing artist. Anyway, so the story in particular that I decided, so I looked at all the stories that Robert E. Howard had written, a lot of mainly short stories really, and thought, okay, which out of these is my favorite? And I came upon, and I think this is, I know some have other different favorites, but I think this is my favorite. And I found like a lot of Conan fans will share this. My favorite Robert E. Howard Conan the Barbarian story is The Tower of the Elephant, which has seen not just one, not just two, but has seen three versions that I know of. I'm not sure if they did it, because there was the Cimmerian that was published by a European company, and I'm not sure if they've done their version of it, and I'm sure they will. Over years, there will be more and more examples of these. But I wanted to look at the first three versions of them, because in a lot of ways they got a lot going on. And when I was preparing for this and reading through a lot of stuff, I'd seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, you know, this version of the Tower of the Elephant or Black Colossus or whatever is the best," and blah blah blah, blizz blaz blizz blaz. And I'm not going to get into that because, to be quite honest, I like the 3 different versions that I'm going to show you here today, and each has their own special twist to it. There's something special about each one of them that makes them unique and able to stand all on themselves, all while telling essentially the same story. I've read the story. I've listened to the audio book. I read the comics. As a matter of fact, I reread the Dark Horse version, even though that was the most recent version I read. I just wanted to get back in my mind because the earlier two were very plain in my mind. And we'll start out that with Conan number 4, The Tower of the Elephant. With, let's throw away this bookmark there, with Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith. Oh, hang on a second. Oh, gonna tilt my thing. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Now, at this point too, Barry was in the BWS the Barry Windsor Smith that we know and love, but he was on his way. And in many ways, to me, this is where he really starts. He starts to become less and less of a clone of Jack Kirby, and really does start to sprout his own wings. But of course, it's a shortened version. It's the shortest of the 3 I'm going to show you. The story basically is starts off with Conan in this city where he's in a bar and some guys bragging about kidnapping people and stuff like that. You know, it was the olden days. And Conan sticks his nose in because he'd overheard one of them talking about the Tower of the Elephant. And he's like, well, you know, what is this Tower of the Elephant? And the older crowd and all that laugh and mock him and stuff like that. And as usual will happen in this situation, a fight breaks out. And of course, because it involves Conan, the other guy ends up dead. Where is it? There, yeah. Anyway, so Conan gets away like he always does. And like I say, this is a slightly truncated version. But he makes his way to the grounds of the Tower of the Elephant. It's in this city Zamora, I think it is. And he comes across this guy who's Taurus of Numidia, the Prince of Thieves, and who happens to be there wanting to rob the place the same night. So they get together and they climb and get into the tower, and Taurus is actually the first to die, and it turns out to be this giant spider, which tries it on Conan, but you know, Conan's just too cool for that. Anyway, after he kills the spider, he goes from room to room, and he finds his one room in what looks to be a statue of an elephant. Now, he'd heard of elephants and all that, but never really seen one. And then the statue, the eyes open, and he realizes this is actually a creature. And the creature tells him how he's been imprisoned there by the evil sorcerer. Whatever his name is, what was it? Yag something anyway. Yara. And he got tricked by Yara. He's from the stars and all this. Anyway, he gets Conan to pledge to put him out of his misery and to soak the jewel, the heart of the, as it's called, the elephant, in his blood, and deliver it to the wizard, which he does. And there's a cool scene where Yara starts to get smaller and smaller, and he gets sucked into the gem, and Conan looks into the gem, and he can see our elephant god here has found Yara and spends an eternity chasing him, I guess. And anyway, Conan realizes that, I better get out of here, and he gets out of there, and the whole thing comes tumbling down. No. Great comment. A great story. And like I say, I'm a big fan of Barry Windsor Smith. Of course, I more love his later stuff, but that story I always liked because, number one, I do believe it's the first adaptation I'd ever seen of Conan in general and of that story. So that was the first go at it, and I thought he did a pretty good job because I always liked that version. And like I say, in the other ones, now of course I can imagine if Barry Windsor Smith did a Tower of the Elephant today, it would be quite different and probably very lush and very cool. Anyway, you're talking about 20-something pages there anyway for that issue. And then, of course, because at the time, that was 1970 that Conan started, and in 74 they came out with a magazine, The Savage Sword of Conan. And this was, The Savage Sword of Conan was more or less meant for your older readers. So they could have, and they could even have a little bit of nudity and stuff like that. So there were some stories that ran in the Conan story, that when they came in this, there was some nudity, or there was something anyway that wasn't in the other version. Anyway, the other thing too I found about the Savage Sword of Conan was the art, where the art was just off the scale. They always had very good artists. Everyone from, Jim Sterling did this cover, for instance. Barry Windsor Smith, of course. John Buscema did a lot. Alfred A. Kayla inking John Buscema, which more or less looks like Alfredo L. Kayla anyway. And some of those were just amazing, including, of course, this version of the Tower of the Elephant. Boom, 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 boom. And Kayla, like I say, when he would ink stuff, this is of course in black and white. When he would ink things, they would become his own. And I mean, look at this. The ink work is just off the scale here. Let's see if we can get a. Okay, there we go. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful ink work for anyone who's into drawing and all that. Even just looking at it, absolutely stunning. Kalo, of course, I mean, he did all kinds of things for Marvel and DC, including a few Swamp Things with Alan Moore and a lot of stuff. And same story all through again. This one, of course, is slightly longer, and the detail, of course, they I guess had more time to draw and work on it. The detail and everything was just off the scale. Here's that final scene where Yar gets sucked into the jewel, and Conan watches as it gets sucked down in. And I always love the scene where it ends off with the, whatever his name is, the, jeez, I hate when these stick together. Listen. Here we go. Dun, 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 dun. And he's being chased. That is so cool. But like I say, absolutely beautifully drawn. Especially for any of you art nuts out there, it's cool. And of course, we end off with the classic scene of the tower falling. It's interesting to see how this scene is shown in all of them. A great and dramatic end to the whole thing. The tower comes tumbling down. And like I say, when I first read this one when I was young, I was just like, now that. Because when I was reading Conan, it was winning, awards and stuff like that. And because at the time, Sword and Sorcery was pretty brand new. But I mean, it was, I do believe it won 2 best series awards. I know that a couple of the stories won awards, and Barry Smith himself, I do believe. But yeah, it was right up there in my mind in the 70s with Tomb of Dracula and Swamp Thing, three of them were always, especially in the early 70s, were always fighting it out, along with the Fourth World. Anyway, last but not least, oh God, is the very, very heavy Colossal Conan. This thing weighs a ton. And this is, now in this, this Kurt Busiek, the other two were actually written by Roy Thomas. This version was adapted by Kurt Busiek, and in reading it and all that, it's pretty similar. It's like it's as close to word to word that I've seen, because it goes over 4 issues, I do believe, in the end, and Carrie Nord does the artwork, and it once again is one of my favorites, but for different reasons. Now this thing is going to be a lot harder for me to hold up for you to have a look at, because this thing weighs a ton. And anyway, there's the, we'll just flip here, he is heading into the, to there, the Prince of Thieves, where he meets that guy, and they climb, and they get into the tower, and he gets killed, but he manages to kill the spider, and then he meets the elephant. And the art in this scene is actually quite spectacular. So anyway, and here he is when he passes the gem to him, and then and then he makes a run for it, and he watches the tower of the elephant come tumbling down. Da-na-na-na-na-na. Pretty darn cool. Actually, one of my favorites of, because it's actually a 2-page spread. No, that is cool, hey? So yeah, in some ways, probably my favorite. Now this thing, like I say, weighs a ton, so I got to drop this before it drops me. And now the reason, and it's funny because of the 3 versions I look at in this video, 2 of them were in color, and the middle one in black and white. All beautiful for their own things. The Dark Horse one I like because it's the longest of the 3, so it's even more true to the original material. But the other 2 are pretty close. All 3 really do hold the flavor of the story close to their breasts in all 3. The Dark Horse one, I guess it is the length and all that. The storytelling is even better. Not because I always liked Roy. I admire Roy, but Kurt really seemed to have an affinity for some reason for Conan. He had the touch, and his adaptation, like I say, I think is top notch. So out of all 3 of them, I would give the Dark Horse one probably a 9 out of 10. Then the ILOGL one, a 8.5, and the first one, Conan, which still holds a place in my heart, a 8 3/4. I'll put it right in between the other 2. But all 3 of them, like I say, great adaptations, all of the same story. So it's kind of neat to be able to see the approach of 3 of, well, not 3, because Thomas did do the first 2, of 3 different artists to the same source material, and 2 different writers. So if you get a chance, have a read of them. And there, like I say, there are other tales too that all 3 have done, but Tower of the Elephant, I just love it. I just love it all to death. Anyway, that's enough for now. I'm going to go and do some comic book working myself, and hopefully Luna will be with me, I think, in the next one, maybe. Hard to say. Anyway, I'll tell her. I'll pass on her greetings from all of you out there in there, and don't forget the Buy Me a Coffee that we got set up under the Library of Comix. Feel free to check that out, and throw in a few bucks, even $5, whatever, because it all goes to buying books, to a review, and to leave in the library, which eventually will become a public lending, not a lending library, a research library for some institution. I have been collecting this just to sell it again. I did that with my collection I had as a kid. And where did it get me? Well, it took care of me for 4 years. But where did it get me? Well, actually, yeah, it did take care of me for 4 years. But where is it now? It's all sold off to all these people who, I guess, became friends of mine and started, continued a lifelong love. And actually, in some ways, that's right. It started me working on this library. Anyway, that being said, thanks for having me over, and we'll see you very soon. Okay, hit it. Oh my God. Oh no, it's taking me away. Okay, let me.